Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Sylvia and Peter talking about issues and concepts in mental health and well-being, and anything and everything that comes under that bracket and bucket. This is not scripted. This is just Sylvia and I having a conversation about something that is either very hot topic right now or something that has been nagging us for a long time, or situations where we think we have a view that might be a bit controversial. And of course, we like to hear your thoughts and ideas in response to what we do. For those of you who haven't met us before, Sylvia and I are both counselors of different types and variation. If you think of counselors and therapists, there are two broad types: those who start their life and career in therapy and counseling, and those who move into therapy and counseling later on in their career, having done all sorts of other things before that point. Sylvia and I belong to the latter group. We have been in our careers for a long time, and then we transitioned into helping other people with their mental health issues. So enough about us. But what we wanted to talk about today is, well, we are the people that other people go to for help. So there are people out there who are the go-to person. And where do the go-to people go for help when they need to dump and offload or get a bit of support? Because we only have so much to give, but we also need to get something back in again in order to continue what we're doing. And I know, Sylvia, this is a topic that is very close to your heart.
Yes, it is, Peter, and it's an intriguing title, isn't it? Where do go-tos go to?
Yeah.
And I used to think about like in the workplace, when you're at the top of, you're the supervisor and everyone comes to you. You know, you are the stakeholders' go-to person. Where do I go to? And I used to I call it leadership loneliness. It can be a very lonely place being at the top. Where do I go to talk when things are going on? And also in my own personal life, I seem to be the go-to person for so many people. I'll go and talk to Sylvie, or Sylvie will help you with that. Sylvie's fine with that. And yes, I am. But there are times when the go-to needs somewhere to brainstorm ideas, bounce ideas, or simply it's very tiring being the person that everyone goes to, because the expectation is you're on the top of your game the whole time. Your decision making, your problem solving, you're at the top all the time. You know, your body language, your language is scrutinized, and if you snap at someone, if you're irritable with someone, oh, what's going on there? It's that recognition. It's tough being that go-to person.
Yes.
Where do they go to? Because everyone sort of almost like puts you on a pedestal, and even actually I don't want to be on that pedestal, but that's where I've ended up.
You know, I always ask I have asked in my past career in industry, who supervises the supervisor? Who manages the manager? Who directs the director? And then you get to the CEO, and well, who actually looks after them? Who do they go to when they need some sort of help? They might go to a coach. Who coaches the coach? They might seek counseling, but who counsels the counselor? We can carry on in that loop. But at some point, I think some of us have the ability to absorb other people's lives and trials and tribulations without letting it get to us. But even though we can do that, you and I know that we also need to let go at some point and let off steam. And maybe that is by having another interest in life than looking after people. But this is not just something that happens in the work setting. How about parents? How about older siblings who look after the younger siblings sometimes? How about teachers at school?
Carers.
You know, carers. There's always somebody who looks after somebody else. And where do they go? You know?
It is a very interesting and intriguing, because you know, some may argue that the parent has the rest of the family around them. The CEO has the board around them. But at the same time, there's also that I was going to say caution, hesitation, apprehension. Say, for example, I go and speak to someone else. Are they going to use that as a sign of weakness, as a sign of a bit of leverage over me later on? So quite often it's talking to someone outside of that environment that often works. So again, there's that, and that's why I call it leadership loneliness. You know, where does that person go to share their thoughts, where they're not going to be judged, where it's not going to be held against them, and it's done in a constructive way as opposed to a weakness way. And it's a really interesting point. I find, to me, where does a go-to go to? For me, generally, I go to other go-tos, and we have a bit of a natter together.
Yeah.
Or as you, to your point, you know, go and do something that's completely different. Mine is horse riding outside, you know, the natural world, to recharge my batteries. Comes back to that resilience thing. You know, resilience isn't withstanding and persevering and digging deep and going on. It's bouncing back, recharging our batteries. But where do we go where we can do that without there being any judgment or, you know, retribution about it, and step back in and continue to be the go-to person that everyone sees? You don't want to sort of show that chink in the armor, because then you don't become that go-to person anymore.
We have that chink in the armor problem all the time. There's a lot of talk about, well, we need to look after employees' mental health and well-being. Absolutely right, we do. But who is the employee? Managers are employees.
And
directors are employees. The CEO is an employee. So we can't think about this mental health and well-being in business as being top down. So the top up here, they're great, they're fine, it's a finished article, no issues, but everybody else further down, they need looking after. Very often, those in the lower levels of the organization struggle because the top brass are struggling. So if they don't get the care and attention and the training and the education in dealing with people and knowing that people are valuable, not just numbers or bums on seats or whatever the expressions are that we hear so often. If the CEO has a bad day, that can be a bad business day, but it can also be a bad day at home. Life happens outside of work, and we do take it into the workplace. It's inevitable. We cannot just become a different person when we walk through the gates and when we walk back out of the gates again. So what we can do, all of us, I think, is to take the mystery away from mental health and well-being and accept that we all have it, we all need it. And if we are kind to one another, just being kind doesn't cost anything, then the pressure cooker lets off a little bit of steam, and then other problems will not be there. Then, of course, there's a whole attitude problem with, I'm in charge, you are not, therefore I decide, therefore I treat you the way I want to because I pay you anyway. There's a lot of that, and there's also the conflicts in families where there's power struggles and all sorts of things. But we get back to the same point. Someone always needs to talk to somebody about something.
I think to your point there, it's just to remember that regardless of position, wealth, you know, although we are all human, and the CEO is human, the parent is human, you know, royalty is human, you know, anyone in an organization is a human being. And it's interesting to your point, you know, that if the CEOs are okay, let's use that word, they're okay, then it generally filters down. But at the same time, having those role models within organizations where people are prepared to share their experiences, to show that we are all human and we can all have a bad day, and also to remember that as human beings we are all vulnerable. We are all able to be hurt regardless of where we are. But that takes quite a lot of strength. I remember you just, you know, thinking someone's up there talking about how they overcame this and how they, you know, they did this and they did that. But how did they overcome that?
Yes.
How did they do that? And it's all very well, those people talking about that, but give the people down the line the ideas of how they can also overcome. So that message does filter down, so you don't end up with these at the top, oh, they look like they're always good. How do they always stay cool, calm and collected?
I think you're
That's the
making,
question. How do they always stay cool, calm and collected? What do they do? And then the ones below can also use them as models or role models. Oh, perhaps I can do that too. Yeah.
I think you're making an extremely valid point there, one that people tend to forget, that health and well-being is not hierarchical.
Mm.
There can be any number of people in any organization as role models, as the ones who show the way. This is how I overcame my issues. This is what I do. You can do the same if you want to. It doesn't have to be management led. It doesn't have to be dictated from the top, and therefore you've got this role and that role, and now you're in charge of mental health and well-being, and you're not. So it's not your responsibility, but it's his and not hers. It's going about it the wrong way. Everybody has something to contribute.
Mm.
And I think everybody should be given the chance to contribute, because someone on the shop floor can easily have life experiences that are valuable to learn from for the guys and girls in the boardroom.
Mm.
Because again, as we said before, we are all human beings.
Mm.
We live lives that are pretty similar in terms of content. Some have family, some have dogs, some, we all are in pretty much the same boat.
Mm.
and face similar aspects of life out there.
Mm.
And as for the go-to, where do they go to? More and more I see technology creeping in.
Mm-hmm.
We have mindfulness apps. You just go onto your app store on your phone and see what can you get in terms of mental health and well-being apps. It is enormous. They're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Some are downright crap and others are very good.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do is they're there instantly for you if that's the thing that you like.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not need a go-to. That is the end point. Mm-hmm. But you are talking to a machine. You are not getting the live and human feedback. Some like it, some don't. They have a place, and like when computer games first became a thing in the early to mid 1990s, I was in the translation industry at the time, and we got to translate and convert all sorts of rubbish computer games. And gradually everything fell into place, and the sensible players in the market survived, and all the nonsense ones disappeared. I think the same will happen with the mental health and wellness apps. The good ones will survive, and they will become bigger and bigger and better. And the amateurish ones will simply just wither and die. So it is an option to have technology, and it's an option to have human interaction.
I think one of the things that I know what I've done myself over the years is create what I call my own sort of toolkit, as a go-to. What are my tools? Picking those people that I really trust. Mm-hmm. Again, generally is another go-to. Or having those hobbies and pastimes that allows me to escape. Sometimes using technology. Doing all those different things. And it will be down to each individual to build their own, toolkit to enable them, for example, to raise self-awareness is something you touched on earlier, and it popped up for me, is raising our awareness as to when we are that go-to person. Oh, hang on a minute, I'm starting to not feel my normal okay self. Okay, so what do I do about that? What do I need to do? Is it some breathing? Is it some mindfulness? Is it going for a walk? Is it talking to another go-to? Is it taking 5 minutes, stepping away for 5 minutes? How do I stay cool, calm and collected is one of the things I used to ask some of the CEOs where I used to be. You always appear cool, calm and collected. What do you do? Some of them used to go for a run, go to the gym, spending time with their family. It's those things. And this then is for everyone within an organization, everyone within a family. We talk about, as you say, employers and CEOs looking after their employees and their workforce. But it's, in my opinion, everyone's responsibility to look after their own health, mental health, physical health, well-being. What can I do? And if I can do that, I can then share that with other people. And then it's a positive spiral upwards, as opposed to everyone sort of working in isolation. Yeah. But it's around, working out your own toolkit that works for the individual.
And in the organizational setting, there is this legal requirement of the employer and the CEO to make sure that their employees do not get ill by going to work. So they have to provide the environment that allows exactly what you just talked about to happen and to flourish. So it cannot be something that is just one way direction. It has to be, we all have a responsibility at different levels for the health and well-being in an organization and for ourselves. And what we can do in business and in other places as well, we can look at the root causes. Where does all this come from? Because whilst yoga is good and mindfulness is good and deep breath and counting to 10 and all those wonderful techniques that are out there, they are right, they are good. I have nothing against them, but they fix the symptoms and take off the spikes of the problem. They do not fix the root causes. And that's where we also have to go, so that we need less go-to time because we fix the problems where they begin.
I think the point is to recognize when that help is required, whatever that means for the individual, and know and reach out for that and what they need, and as I say, create this, bespoke toolkit with lots of different, ingredients in it. So for certain environments, you might be going for a walk, another it might be talk to another go-to. It might be, as you say, the technology, going out and having some fun, with some significant others and doing those things. But it's then they can confidently go to that support. And use the right support for any given situation or circumstance or context. So it's not, this is what's happening, I need to do that. Having those options so they can maintain that, maintain their okay position, so they don't start to feel disappointed or frustrated, or that loneliness that being at the top, that go-to, can sometimes be. And I know I've experienced that myself, but I now have this sort of little toolkit that I have, and it's and then you can share that with other people.
Absolutely. When you are at the top, it can be lonely. It very often is lonely, and a lot of people at the top seek advice on the business perspectives, but not on the personal perspectives, because we, as we talked about in the previous session, we take our mental health for granted, that, oh, it's just there, I can just cope. But we can't. We need to allow ourselves to be human and to take a break and figure out, what do I need to do next, and who can I go to, what can I do? And there are people out there who will help in different ways for different purposes. So don't expect a general purpose go-to person, because nobody is a general purpose go-to person. And I think maybe we should leave that thought out there, figure out who could you go to, because it's important to go somewhere, and either somewhere or to somebody, and seek that help, seek that bit of inspiration. It doesn't always have to be help. It could just be inspiration. It could be sense checking something. And I need to go to the coffee maker right now because my coffee has run out. And I think our time in this conversation has also run out. So unless you have any other burning comments you want to make, I think we should let people get back to work.
I would just make one last comment though, Peter. When you said there, when the person's at the go-to person, everyone's coming to them all the time, and they have to be, their best self the whole time, on, producing all the time, this and this. Sometimes just asking that person, no one ever asked me, are you okay, Sylvie? No one ever asked me that. And sometimes I wish they had. So that's one thing, when someone's at the top, always just ask them, are you okay?
Yes.
Probably they'll say yes, but it might just be a little reminder to that person, actually, I do need to actually take care of myself too.
Excellent point. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and go and top up your coffees. I will, and Sylvia will, of course. Take care. Bye.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.